My nonno was Vincenzo. My nonna was Antonia. Nonno arrived in Australia in May 1927, and my nonna arrived with my father in 1949, October. My nonno had bought a property from the Bogdanich family, which were across the road from where they lived, and they settled there. It was on Gribble Road. Gribble Road back then was a pretty long street, and it started on Balcatta Road and finished at Bryan Road. Nearly 4 acres they had in total. Nonno and Dad grew cauliflowers, cabbage, tomatoes, celery, carrots. They were the main crops. The tomatoes and celery were mainly grown in the swampland. The others were on the sandy soil. That's my father, Pasquale, and a countryman that came out on the same ship as my father, and they were celebrating. I think it could be somewhere near Christmas time or just after they bought the property. That was Nonna's house. It was, I can just barely, I was born, when I was born I came back to that house. It was a 2-bedroom, a kitchen, and it had a dining room, which later added an extra room when we were all in there, and a laundry which was outside, a bathroom which was outside, undercover, and another room and a cellar.
Dad was Pasquale and Mum was Elvira. I remember as a kid, when Mum wasn't well, we'd all have to chip in, because Mum had issues with her back. So when Mum wasn't well, we'd all have to chip in, especially if we had to spray. There was no way of getting out of it. You had to help back in the day. So, chores had to be done. The market garden just didn't stop. Things had to keep going. Especially in summer with the tomatoes, when it was really, really busy, all hands were on deck. We had to help pick, and then we'd have to go down to the shed and help pack. But while Mum and Dad started packing, myself or whoever was helping would have to go back up to the house, and I mean, we're not talking a few metres, we're talking a few metres, go back up to the house, get a tray with the lunch, take that down to the shed, then I'd go back, tray with the wine and the water and all the rest of it, take it down to the shed. You didn't stop, you ate as you packed, because that's what it was like back then. And they were really lucky. There was a family friend, Nick DiCarlo. He seemed to know, you didn't have to ring him, but he seemed to know when Mum and Dad were busy, and he would turn up and we'd feed him and he'd help, and we'd be a lot of laughter in the shed, and it was great. The truck was predominantly used for market, but it was also, I remember as a kid we'd have to go out in the truck, especially if he was going to market. We'd have to go to, say we were going to somebody's home, Dad would drop us off to the person's home, and then he'd continue on to the market. So it was kind of like the family car as well back then. Well, we all went to Gwelup Primary School, but my 2 older sisters, for their first year, I think, they went to Our Lady of Grace at North Beach. But predominantly I had all my primary school years at Gwelup, and then they also had predominantly their years at Gwelup Primary School. A great school, a lot different to what it is today. Had the 2 little old wooden classrooms, I suppose you call it. One is no longer there because it got eaten by white ant, but the other one is heritage listed, and it's still there today, still as some sort of classroom, and it's really lovely to see after all these years.
St. Teresa is a patron saint. It's celebrated on the 1st of October, so whatever the Sunday closest to the 1st of October, they would organise they had a church. The church was called St. Teresa, which is still there on North Beach Road, behind the retirement village. All the locals, whether they'd be Italians, Yugoslavs back then, Macedonians, they'd all get together on this particular day and have a procession where they would carry St. Teresa there would be 6, 8 guys carrying the actual saint, which they had in the church, on their shoulders. And they'd go down as far down as North Beach Road to where Lake Gwelup Primary School is, then back up again. And it was pretty hilly, like it is now. And after the procession, they would have a mass. When the mass finished, they would have a festival with stalls, vegetables, cakes, fruit. But there was one thing that sticks in my mind, even though it was little. They had a pole, a grease pole. And you had to climb the grease pole to get salami or sausages that was tied up right at the top.
I do remember that, and I do remember the grease pole. I don't remember the sausages and salami at the top, but I do remember the grease pole. And I remember the maypole. They used to dance around the maypole. That I do remember. I think it was predominantly the ladies. I don't think the men went anywhere near. The men were too busy out the back having a drink and, socialising. But no, I do remember, because that was also a time you get together with your friends from school. Because other than school, the only real friends were the friends that you had in your street. So when you went to something like the St. Teresa Festival, you got to see your other friends as well, which was really good.
The chores that I did on the market garden was picking tomatoes and grading them. And I remember usually on a Sunday, because Sunday was a market day, so all my friends would be going to the beach and I had to pick these tomatoes. In the beginning I was a little bit resentful because they were at the beach and I was picking tomatoes, but in actual fact, in the end, you felt like you were contributing, and everyone in the family did it. It wasn't like I was the only one. My sisters were also doing chores in the garden, so I was, I suppose, the tomato one. And grading, I used to enjoy grading the tomato. That was good fun. That was really good fun. I don't know if I could do it today though. On the property, I used to fall in the swamps a lot. And my dad would come and fish me out and my mum would hose me down, and then they'd get back to doing whatever they were doing on the market garden, and I'd get back to just playing, mostly with Maria. Before Virginia came along, I remember playing a lot of things on the market garden with Maria, and we would just be playing in the cabbage boxes or on the trolley or walking up and down the railway track that we had on the market garden. They were just simple things, but they kept us really happy and entertained. Because Mum and Dad were very busy in the market garden. We had to entertain ourselves. We had a few dolls that we played with, and they were good times playing with those dolls, and we did a lot of pretend games, and we'd get rough with each other sometimes. But then Virginia came along, and I was really jealous because 7 years it was just Maria and I for 7 years. Then Virginia came along, and I was a little bit jealous of her. But then, then we just, even though we were generations apart, we actually grew up quite close, and still very close to this very day. Oh, as a little girl, to me, I thought it was massive. It was absolutely huge. And to the side of the shed, there was a chicken pen. And then I remember we used to have a couple of pigs on the market garden, and they were housed next to the chicken pen, but the actual shed was huge. To a little girl, it was actually quite huge. And it used to house everything in there, all Dad's equipment, mostly a lot of hand equipment that he used to use to turn over the soil to prepare the garden for a next crop of vegetables. It had the boxes in there, it had the truck in there, it just had everything in there, absolutely everything. All the insecticides and pesticides. It was a big shed. I remember being taken to the Osborne Park show, and I remember the fireworks, and I remember the stalls, and the stalls were very, very simplistic. It was just fruit and vegetables. All the market gardeners used to have their fruit and vegetables on display, and there used to be prizes for who had the best tomatoes, the best cucumbers, the best watermelons. I remember eating a lot of fairy floss, used to get sick on that. But more so than the Osborne Park show, there used to be a little down the road on the corner of Main Street and Hutton Street. There used to be a co-op that everyone from the area used to go and do their shopping there. And I used to love going to the co-op because it had everything there. It had, it was like your IGA, but it had a little bit more. And I remember going there, not with my mum, but more so with my grandparents. We used to get on the bus and it used to take us down to Main Street and we would shop at the co-op. And now it's the Amaretto, I think it's called Amaretto Cafe.
I think it was just the time. It was just, everything was sort of carefree and, I don't know, everybody knew everybody. I don't know, it was like a big community, big family. And it didn't matter that, you know, you didn't have to be from the Italian background. You could be Croatian, you could be Slav, you could be Macedonian, you could be Greek, you could even be the Aussie. You know, everybody just got on. I'd have to say Gwelup and Lake Gwelup Primary School was very multicultural before multicultural became the in thing, the in word.
The people that lived in the area before the freeway came through were the Bogdanages, they were called Tutsulis. We used to call them Baba and Dedo. They were an elderly couple who didn't speak English. And on the other side was the Tasalises. And we were all very close. The Tasalises had a daughter. She was 10 months younger than me. And we grew up together, went to school, went to high school, went to our weddings. And to date, we're still friends, close friends.
Absolutely. Wouldn't change anything. Wouldn't change anything. It was great. It was really great. Great living in Gribble Road and growing up in Gribble Road. And yeah, no, it was great.